Welcome to Seniors on the Move. Glad to see you again. We have a really good show today. We have a really good friend of mine. I'm honored to know her. And we're going to talk about a very popular subject and a wonderful book about yoga, Y-O-G-A, yoga. But I want to read a little bit. Her name is Ritu Kapur, or Ritu. She has a master's degree in occupational therapy from Boston, at Boston University, and has been living in the Boston area since '95. That's quite a while. She's been sharing the love of yoga with people of all ages and abilities since 2009. In 2014, encouraged by her husband, who I have met also, great guy, a longtime meditator himself, she opened her yoga/meditation studio called Soham. Is there what is the meaning of Soham? I'm curious.
Absolutely. So Soham is one of a beautiful mantras, which means I am that.
Oh.
So if when we meditate on the breath, focusing on the breath, you can mentally chant so as you breathe in, hum as you breathe out, and it means I am that.
Interesting. And her studio was in Westboro, Massachusetts, and she's going to tell you a little bit more later about what she's doing. She found that teaching yoga was rewarding and fulfilling, and eventually left her job as a rehab director to manage the studio for 7 years. It was 7 years. I remember taking a couple of classes. Soham made yoga practices accessible to many and nourished the love of yoga for teachers and practitioners alike before closing in 2020 due to what else? The COVID epidemic. She is currently teaching online and planning local and international retreats, and they do sound wonderful. In addition to ongoing studies in Indian philosophy and Hindustani, I'm not sure,
Yes.
classical music. She hopes her book manifests inspiration, guidance, and empowerment to many. She hopes her book, I already said that. She held her first book signing, and I was there, at Tatnick Bookseller here in Westboro, Mass., which made her a best-selling local author. Well, we want to go beyond local, don't we? All right, big question. What is yoga? Many people don't know what it is, really.
Absolutely. Generally when people talk about yoga or think what is yoga, they're thinking about the physical body movements. But yoga is so much more than that. It's actually one of the 6 philosophies that came from ancient India a few thousand years ago. And there is a whole book called Yoga Sutras, which has close to 200 verses written by a sage. And it was a whole philosophy practiced in India for the goal of self-realization.
All right. Now, the word sutra means?
Sutra literally means a thread, so something that binds together. It brings the knowledge of student and teacher together.
All right. But can you give us a little information about what people know or think they know about how it got started? Because I've heard some stories, they sound interesting, about people sitting in positions, meditating.
Yeah.
Can you give us anything at all that I'm sure you've read about yourself?
Yeah, absolutely. So the Rishi Patanjali, who is the author of Yoga Sutra, he offered 8 limbs. You can call them 8 limbs of yoga. So that's a very a beautifully balanced practice, very beautifully explained, sort of in steps, how to do it. It includes the physical postures, it includes breath work, which is very scientific in nature. It includes working with the mind, and eventually going very deep in meditation. So if you have seen pictures of saints sitting in cross-legged position for a long time, they have gone through this process of being in that place for many, many, many years. So now they can sit for hours or days at end in deep meditation.
So
but
they're still
practice,
doing that. So the practice has remained basically the same would
in
you say?
India, in parts of India where there are rishis and ashrams, there are small, I would say, group of people who are deeper into what yoga was originally. But of course, in the modern world, the presentation of yoga itself has changed, right? Like what we see here, an hour-long class all about physical postures.
Yes.
But that's happening in modern parts of India as well, in the cities.
Okay. So do we practice mostly hatha yoga in this country? Is that the more physical?
That is
Of the
physical,
different types?
but now there are so many different types, which is actually can be very confusing because people start giving their own names to their types, probably for little, getting their name out there, and they
Sure.
change a few things. It's all coming from that classical yoga eventually, but it has been changed and modified to suit the needs of, what's in demand and what people want.
So in your classes and in your retreats, are you doing classical yoga then mostly, or do you add other types now and then? We don't have to go into it too deeply, but
Right.
I'm thinking people might be asking that kind of question.
So I like to offer a very mindful practice of yoga, not
Okay.
just a physical practice, not in a way where people think they have to sweat it out, kind of.
Not a hot yoga. I've heard of hot yoga too.
No hot yoga.
Okay.
There was no hot yoga. It's Soham as well.
All right.
It just doesn't work for me. But when you move in the asana practice with a lot of breath awareness, with a clear focus and centering of your mind, practice changes completely. So that's what I try to bring in my personal practice and when I teach my students.
And is that what your new book has to do with? It says here, Teach Yoga, Touch Hearts, a guide to creating inspirational yoga practice. Is this just for teachers? And here's the book right
Great
here.
question. So when I wrote the book, I have addressed it to the teachers, like I'm talking to them. But it's certainly not meant just for teachers. Anybody who loves yoga can pick this book up and read the basic concepts of yoga explained in a very easy to understand manner. And many practitioners of yoga have read this book and told me that they have loved it.
Oh, that's wonderful.
so-
And I have to admit, I have not read the whole thing, but I will.
Yeah.
Because I know you personally. I'm looking at, on the bookmark. I got a free bookmark with a beautiful picture on the back. But I'm just going to read. You have within you more love than you could ever understand. You place a lot of emphasis on love, which is
Yeah.
important and what we need more of in this world. And that's Rumi.
That's Rumi.
Yeah, I've read some of Rumi.
Yeah.
He's very, very interesting. Can we talk about the yoga breath a little bit more?
Sure.
Why do we need it? Why can't we just do the movements, the asanas? And
So, yes, good question. We could certainly just move, but then it would just be an exercise. When you practice with your breath, so many things shift. You are more focused. You're working on your breath, which is the main thing that keeps us alive.
sure,
So,
kind of
and deep
important.
breathing affects every system within our body. Every system is affected, the way we breathe, how much oxygen we bring in, the way we exhale, because breathing affects your emotions right away.
It does.
It's very linked. When we are angry, our breath changes. When we are relaxed, our breath is relaxed. So in yoga, when you practice a mindful breathing, it shifts even the poses you're practicing. It shifts your whole practice.
It's just a different feeling.
Yes.
It just amazes me. But could you either tell us, is there one way to do it, one particular way? I think it's up and hold and out again. But could you give us a little more detail on a basic yoga breath?
Actually, there's a few different types of breath.
Yes,
The whole
yes.
breath work in yoga is called pranayam, which means expanding your breath or science of breathing. But typically when we are moving with the asana practice, we breathe in and out through the nose, long inhale and a nice long exhale.
Okay.
And so if you are aware, then your poses will be, you will have more steadiness in your practice.
Okay. And the exhalation, I think I remember someone telling me, should be longer than the inhalation. Is that true?
Not should be, but at times it is nice to practice
right.
longer exhalations. It can be the same length as your exhale, like 4 in, 4 out, but it could be 4 in, 6 out. When our exhale is long, we tap into the parasympathetic nervous system, the calming part of the brain. So even if you practice that 4 in, 6 out, longer exhale just for a few minutes, you'll notice that you'll be more relaxed in just a few minutes.
It does work.
It works.
You have to go to some place where they really know what they're doing, and they usually do. How about its importance today? I would think yoga all of a sudden is going to become even more important to folks.
Yeah.
We need to go within.
We need to go within.
Everything is out there, and we need to be quiet, which is difficult for some people. Maybe turn the television off, unless they're watching a Zoom class of yours. Tell me a little bit more about the book, about what it's about, and why I should read it.
So anybody who is, I could say, on maybe saying a spiritual path may be too strong a word, but anybody who has connected with themselves, looked within, as you had mentioned just now, would find a lot of nuggets of wisdom in this book. I have brought spirituality from a very global perspective. It is in yoga context, but it's very global, which spirituality is. So I have, shared quotes from Rumi, of course, who was a couple thousand years ago from Persia, but then a lot of passages by John O'Donoghue, from a priest from Ireland recently, poets like Mary Oliver and Henry David Thoreau from our backyard, right?
Yeah.
And when you read passages from all these people who lived in different times and in different parts of the world, we can see that they're all trying to say the same thing.
Yeah.
They're all talking about the heart and the love and looking within.
Yes, and loving yourself.
Loving yourself, connecting with nature, with animals, all sentient beings.
Now, you do asanas, I know, with the breath, but I think you usually do a meditation at the end, do you?
I like to bring meditative practices in my 1-hour asana class.
Okay.
Even asana, when I guide people, I often tell them, think about that it's a meditation in motion.
Yes.
So you have to be so focused that you feel like you're meditating as you're moving. And then we come to a place where they can hold a pose, and we stay in stillness with some guided breath, or I share quotes. And that's what inspired me to write this book. When I share some inspirational quotes or something that touches your heart, people, really connect with the practice more deeply. And quite often they email me at the end of the class, the quote that you shared today, can you please share it with me again?
Sure.
And I collected so many over the years that I wanted to put them together.
When they're good, we want to keep them. I've done that myself, actually. Of course, being a senior, and the name of the show is Seniors on the Move, how would seniors benefit from yoga? Is it too late for us to start?
No, it's never too late. But the practice that we do should be different depending on your limitations. And if you are not able to get on the floor, on the yoga mat, there can be chair yoga, which is modified poses can be done. The awareness on the breath and focusing the mind, it's still the same. We all need to do that no matter what your age is. We all need to bring awareness within. So that works at any age. You can start
Right.
any time, but just find the right teacher.
But being an occupational therapist first,
Yeah.
I would think you'd be, great in these classes.
I worked with seniors almost all my life in different hospitals and nursing homes.
Oh, you did? I
That
didn't
was
know that.
that was my main focus, working with the seniors. So I do enjoy teaching classes and to seniors, and I can often very quickly see what's going on and modify the poses and help them get on and off the mat as needed when we did in-person classes.
Yes, yeah, I know.
Of course, in the last 2 years, I'm teaching everything online, except my retreats, which are in person.
Okay.
Yeah.
What about children? Do you have you ever had a class for
I
children?
have taught some classes to children. That has not been my main focus, but I have taught classes at many local schools, in Westboro schools, Hopkinton schools.
You have.
Yeah.
So, what are you thinking for the future now? You're going to see what happens with your book, and the information that you get back from people. I'm sure they're going to like it,
Yeah.
and they're going to find out things they didn't even realize.
So far the response has been great.
Oh, good. That's good.
And because I've kept the book, the language, very accessible, very simple for everybody to read and enjoy and understand. Like I said, even people who are not teachers are enjoying this book very much. But, book was just a phase. The energy last year was just right for me to put this book together. It was in my mind for a few years, but I didn't have the right energy to bring it all together.
All right.
And, book happened, but I'm continuing to practice the way I did. So in a way, not much has changed,
All right. But, will you ever go back to in-person teaching? I'm sure you will.
At some point,
It's just that we seem to keep getting all these variants, and we have to be so careful.
Yeah.
So you didn't teach any classes then with masks, or you just stopped teaching? Is that it? You didn't have...
Right. In March 2020, I stopped teaching, of course, with the lockdowns. And then I had to let the studio go because the rent was pretty high. Yeah.
If you were to write another book in the future, I'm sure you must have at least thought about it once or twice. Would it be on the same subject exactly, or would it be, what would you write about? It would be yoga, but in how would you do it? What would you?
So yes, I have thought about writing a book, and I have put some stuff together as well.
Have. Glad I asked that question.
But it's too soon to share because I don't know how it's going to flow. And I'm not pressing myself for any time. I'm just going to stay with that thought for some time and see what happens.
All right. Do your children do yoga? I hope that's not too personal a question.
Not at all. Yes, they do. And they have gone through phases. When they were little, they did it, and then they stopped. In 2020, they did it with me together because there was not much to do after lockdowns. And now it's a phase that they've kind of stopped, but I do remind them, they understand what is sun salutations and, yeah.
What about men? You don't usually see too many men in any kind of a class.
Which is funny. I do see men in the classes, but not as many as women. And it's all the same for everyone, We all need to move our bodies and work with our breath and mind.
Yeah. So if you were to teach a class for seniors, how would you get them to come? What would you say to them? I know you did mention it's still good for them. They need the breathing. They need to stay strong and flexible. How would you attract them? How would you advertise that class?
So I would need a tagline of some sort.
Yeah, we'll have to come up with
Seniors
something
on
catchy.
the move.
Seniors
that's
on
a
the
good
move.
Tagline.
That's right, isn't it?
But the benefits are so many. Even when you do just chair yoga, you move your body in many ways. In fact, I did teach chair yoga at the outpatient center here in Westboro for over a year.
Great.
Yeah.
So now with people with COPD also, I mean, that have breathing problems,
So the
asthma.
breath work
And
is
that
so
helps
helpful
it.
for them. Yes.
That is really good to know.
So even as an OT, because I was working as an OT when I became a yoga teacher, and I did see a lot of patients in the nursing homes with COPD, and I would bring the yoga breath work for them. And that really expanding that breath capacity, knowing how to breathe right, can be so empowering.
That is good to know. Now,
Yeah.
what about the big A, arthritis, osteoarthritis, and I have some of that.
So again, the gentle yoga can be easily practiced, modified poses. I have done workshops, yoga for arthritis at my studio in the
You
past.
have?
Yeah.
And you did get enough people to come and.
I did I did a couple of workshops.
That's
Yes.
great.
Yeah.
But I really would like more people to be interested in yoga, period. And especially we're trying to get most of our seniors. We're living longer, and we want to stay healthy as long as possible.
That's right.
Now, you told me today that you kind of knew what you wanted to talk about. I hope I've asked you the right questions.
Absolutely.
Is there anything else that you would like to say in the last few minutes about yoga, your practice, your future?
I would say if you haven't practiced, to your listeners, if they haven't practiced yoga, find the right teacher and try it for sure. Try the breath work, try closing your eyes and meditating outside in nature.
How do you know if this is a good teacher? Maybe word of mouth, or maybe you need to know about their background a little bit, maybe where they've studied. Do you have to have a degree to teach yoga? Obviously you don't, because I do easy yoga. But
they should have some training. The basic training is 200 hours teacher training.
200 hours?
Yeah,
wow.
So they should have that. Word of mouth is great, because then if a friend of your age is telling you this is a great teacher, then that would work for you. But if that's not possible, then go ahead and talk to the teacher clearly. Say, this is my limitation. What can you do for me? What kind of classes do you teach? And try to find a gentle restorative yoga class. You want to start in the right place so that,
Tell me about the 200 hours. I mean, what does that entail? What kind of training?
So there are so many yoga teacher trainings happening everywhere these days, and they're all different from each other. They're all dependent on who is the teacher. There are some by the Yoga Teacher Association. There are some criteria that they have to follow, like these many hours of anatomy, these many hours of poses. I have done 3 yoga teacher trainings.
You have.
And like I said, they're all different from each other, totally.
I've seen that. I've seen that. Anatomy, you have to know there's over 600 muscles in the body, and it seems like a lot of
Well,
training.
it would be yoga anatomy.
Yoga
so just
mostly.
enough so you can understand the poses and know names of some major muscle groups.
Okay. We have maybe about 4 or 5 minutes left. You mentioned the different types of yoga.
Yeah.
And what type would I be doing as a senior if I was taking a class?
So a few names I could share is, one is if somebody's teaching gentle yoga, but again, talk to the teacher. Restorative yoga.
Restorative, I like that word.
Yeah. So when I teach restorative yoga, we stay on the mat. We don't even do any standing poses. When I was offering that at the studio, we had all kinds of props to use. But now online, I ask people to keep 3-4 blankets handy, maybe a pillow, so we can make those poses very comfortable for ourselves. And then chair yoga, that's great for seniors.
Yeah, that's what I teach mostly. We do a little standing, but I make sure there's a chair available for them to hold on to. We're not standing on our heads, are we? Do you do something like that? Do you and your husband, do you do the headstand? I tried it once.
I do, but it took me a while to do a good headstand. I don't teach that in a group
I didn't
class
think so.
because my teaching style is more on the gentle side. You know, as an OT, I bring that, you know, therapeutic type of training and teaching in my classes.
All right. So you mentioned chair yoga for seniors, but I'm sure some of them will get down on a mat, like when you're doing lower back work and things like that, which is a big problem with seniors. We all have a little bit of that. And I find that I think I took a class with you or someone else that was at the studio, and it really worked.
So, you know,
does work.
Even when I taught chair yoga, first few classes can be just in the chair, maybe standing a little bit, holding the chair. But then over time, I asked people to bring their mats, put the chair at the end of the mat. So, and then I teach them how to get down using the chair. So we can do some seated poses, and how to get up using the chair. So it becomes really safe transition for people. The timing has to be right. You have to see who is in your class and if they're ready for it or not.
How many in the average class today, in all age class? How many do you usually teach at one time?
It varies so much. Sometimes I could have 2 people in my pranayam class, maybe 5. And other times I may have 10 to 15 people in a class. So it varies all the time.
It does, it does. Well, if someone wants to get in touch with you or learn more about you, what you're doing and so forth, your background, do you want to give some information now, maybe a website?
Absolutely. So we talked about my studio, Soham. So my website is the same name, Soham.
Soham.
SOHUM.org.
.org.
And all the information about my classes, my retreats, and my book is
all right. And where can we get your book in this area, at least?
Oh, yes. My favorite bookstore, Tatnak.
Yeah, I like
you
it
know,
there
I have
too.
signed copies there, and I have loved that bookstore for many years since I have lived here. And that's where I wanted my book signing, and you were there.
Yeah, and that's where I go when I want a book. I just give a
so
call.
support
they get
local.
Yeah. You got about 30 seconds. If there's anything else you want to say it now. And
Well,
I'm going to hold the book up again.
maybe I can share a poem from the book. Do we have time?
Quickly. We have 40 seconds. Or,
Well,
okay, go
the
ahead.
The page open to this beautiful prayer, Awakening to Our Own Divinity. It's by the World Peace Prayer Society in New York. Everyone, whatever our religion may be, whatever our nationality or ethnic background may be, let us join hands and pray for the joyfulness of everything in creation, animals, plants, mountains, the air, the earth, and the seas. Let us pray until each member of humanity has awakened to the law of their divinity, and we create true peace in this world.
That's beautiful. And you know what? I did read that. Just want you to know that. Again, thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time. And remember, we don't stop playing because we grow old. We grow old because we stop playing. So keep that in mind. And I want to thank you so much for being with me today.
Thank you, Karen.
And it's so great to see
Such
you.
a pleasure.
Oh, it's a pleasure.